Before you finish watching this video, someone somewhere will click a website that changes their life. A student will discover an idea. A doctor will find information that saves a patient. A small business will make its very first sale. A family separated by thousands of miles will speak as if they were in the same room, all because of one invention. Now imagine if none of it had ever existed. Not because computers failed, but because one quiet engineer never shared a single idea. His name was Tim Berners-Lee, and this is the story of how he accidentally built the modern world. Tim Berners-Lee didn't grow up dreaming of changing history. He simply loved understanding how things worked. While many children were happy playing with their favorite toys, Tim was fascinated by what was hidden inside them. Old radios, mechanical gadgets, anything with screws or wires. He carefully took them apart, not because he wanted to break them, but because he wanted to understand them, piece by piece. Every spring, every circuit, every tiny component told a story. His parents watched with quiet amusement. They weren't surprised. After all, they were both computer scientists. In the Berners-Lee household, ideas were part of everyday conversation. While many families talked about television or football around the dinner table, Tim's family often talked about computers, information, and how people might use technology in the future. Without realizing it, those conversations were shaping the mind of a boy who would one day change the world. One evening, a simple question escaped his lips.
Dad,
Yes, Tim?
can I ask you something? What if information could somehow find its own way to people?
That's an interesting thought. How do you mean?
Like if it just traveled on its own?
Nobody in the room realized they were about to hear the curiosity that would define his life. Nobody at that table could have imagined where that question would eventually lead. Years passed, and Tim's curiosity never disappeared. It simply grew up with him. After studying physics at Oxford University, he found himself at one of the most extraordinary places on Earth, CERN, the European laboratory where thousands of scientists from every corner of the world came together to unlock the mysteries of the universe. Every day, new discoveries were being made. New experiments were beginning. New ideas were changing science forever. But hidden beneath all of that brilliance was an ordinary problem. Information was everywhere. Research papers, computer files, technical notes, laboratory reports. Each department used different computers, different software, different formats. Finding one document often meant searching through several incompatible systems. Scientists spent valuable hours looking for information instead of building on it. Most people accepted the frustration as simply part of the job. Tim couldn't. He didn't see disconnected computers. He saw disconnected knowledge. And to him, knowledge was meant to be shared. The question that had followed him since childhood quietly returned. There had to be a better way. One simple idea was beginning to take shape. The problem stayed with Tim. Even after everyone else had gone home, he couldn't stop thinking about it. Every disconnected computer represented another disconnected idea. There had to be a better way. Late into the evening, he filled notebook after notebook with sketches. Boxes became circles. Circles became arrows. Arrows became connections. Then one thought refused to leave him. What if every document could simply point to another? Not by copying information, but by linking it. One connection could lead naturally to the next. It sounded almost too simple. Perhaps that was exactly why nobody had tried it before. Slowly, the pieces began falling into place. The idea was no longer just a solution for CERN. It could work anywhere, on any computer, for anyone. Tim began writing a proposal. Its title was Information Management, a Proposal. He knew it wasn't perfect, but he believed it was worth sharing. Mike Sendall looked at the proposal. He smiled and wrote 5 words that would become famous. Vague, but exciting. For Tim, that was enough. The journey had truly begun. The idea was no longer enough. Now Tim Berners-Lee had to build it. Not one invention, but several, each solving a different problem. Late into the night inside his office at CERN, the sketches slowly became working code. The first piece was HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, a simple way to organize information so that computers could display documents in a consistent structure. But documents alone weren't enough. They also needed a way to travel between computers. So Tim created HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, a common language allowing one computer to request information from another. There was just one problem left. Once millions of documents existed, how would anyone find the right one? Tim's answer was beautifully simple. Give every document its own unique address. And so he came up with the URL Uniform Resource Locator, a simple idea that still guides us across the web today. Separately, each invention solved a different problem. Together, they created something entirely new, the very foundations of the World Wide Web. There were setbacks, lines of code that refused to work, long nights, countless small mistakes, but every problem solved brought the vision closer to reality. Then, in 1990, Tim built the world's first web browser, a window through which people could finally explore this new digital world. Soon after, he created the world's first website. The web was no longer just an idea. It was alive. There were no television cameras, no newspaper headlines, no applause, just one engineer watching history quietly begin. And just like that, the World Wide Web was born. No fanfare, no celebration, just an idea that would go on to change the world. At first, almost nobody noticed. There were no front-page headlines, no television specials, no celebrations, just a handful of computers quietly exchanging information in a way the world had never seen before. Then something remarkable began to happen. One university connected, then another. Research laboratories, once separated by oceans, could suddenly share discoveries in moments. Ideas traveled faster than airplanes. Knowledge crossed borders without needing a passport. Scientists found research without spending days searching filing cabinets. Students gained access to libraries they had never visited. Teachers discovered new ways to share knowledge with entire classrooms. Doctors, working thousands of miles apart, could learn from one another. Engineers, artists, writers, entrepreneurs, all began building upon the same open foundation. The web wasn't replacing people, it was bringing them together. Then it quietly left the laboratory. Businesses discovered new possibilities. Governments began publishing information online. Families, separated by continents, found new ways to stay connected. A small business could suddenly reach customers around the world. A curious teenager could learn almost anything from almost anywhere. Without fanfare, the World Wide Web had escaped CERN. It no longer belonged to scientists. It belonged to everyone. And with every new connection, the world became just a little bit smaller. Across continents, across languages, across cultures, people who would never meet were now only a few clicks apart. And so, like a raging fire, the quiet revolution had begun. By 1993, the World Wide Web was no longer just an experiment. Across universities, research laboratories, and technology companies, people were beginning to realize what it could become. Tim Berners-Lee understood something even bigger. This was no longer just a tool for scientists. It had the potential to become the foundation of an entirely new digital world. Then he faced a decision that would define his legacy forever. He could patent the technology. He could license it. Every browser, every website, every online business could one day pay to use his invention. The financial rewards could have been extraordinary. Many experts believe that, had the web been patented and licensed commercially, Tim Berners-Lee could have become one of the wealthiest figures in the history of technology. Instead, he asked himself a different question. Not, how much money could this make, but what would help humanity the most? He believed that knowledge became more valuable, the more freely it could be shared. The web was never meant to belong to one company or one government or even one inventor. It belonged to everyone. Together with CERN, a remarkable decision was made. The World Wide Web would be released, free of charge. Anyone, anywhere in the world, could build upon it. No license fees, no gatekeepers, no permission required. For a moment, almost nobody realized what had just happened. There were no television cameras, no newspaper headlines, no cheering crowds, just a quiet announcement inside a research laboratory in Switzerland. Yet that single decision would change history. Years later, companies worth billions, and eventually trillions of dollars, would be built upon the open foundation Tim had chosen to give away. All made possible because the foundation remained free. Tim Berners-Lee chose not to own the web. He chose to share it. And perhaps the greatest fortune he ever created was never measured in money. It was measured in opportunity, in knowledge, in human connection. Because sometimes the greatest gift an inventor can leave the world isn't an invention. It's the decision to let everyone use it. Today, billions of people use the World Wide Web every single day. A student in Lagos opens a research paper. A surgeon in London learns a new technique. A teacher in rural India reaches an entire classroom online. A family separated by oceans sees each other with a single video call. A young entrepreneur starts a business from a spare bedroom. Different lives, different countries, one shared foundation. The World Wide Web became one of humanity's greatest tools for learning, creating, and connecting. Tim Berners-Lee never became the richest inventor in history. Instead, he became one of its most generous. His invention reminds us that the greatest innovations are not always measured by personal wealth. Sometimes they are measured by the opportunities they create for others, by knowledge shared freely, by barriers removed, by lives quietly transformed. The next time you open a web page, remember the curious boy who once wondered whether information could somehow find its own way to people. Because it finally did. And thanks to one remarkable decision, it still can.